All of the governance codes require them, 3 of them: an Audit Committee, a Remuneration Committee, and a Nomination Committee. To give you a broad picture, the Audit Committee is made up, in most jurisdictions, of independent, non-executive directors. Its role is to act as a link between the board and the outside independent auditors. Why? Because as the audit progresses, as the audit proceeds, questions will arise. It's quite natural for the audit partner who's leading the audit to talk with the Chief Finance Officer. The problem to be resolved, whether it's a problem of treating a particular expenditure as capital or revenue, thereby changing the profits, or whether it's a question of valuing assets, particularly important with the new accounting standards. These issues are resolved. Problems could arise about the control systems. Auditors raise questions about the appropriateness of a particular control system, perhaps on management risk. The question is resolved in discussions between the Chief Finance Officer and the external audit partner. And the main board, the other directors, never get to hear about it. What they get is the audit report, hopefully unqualified, and perhaps backed up by a letter identifying outstanding issues. The main board want to know all the issues, particularly the vital ones that might have taken place during the audit. Hence the creation of the Audit Committee. Audit Committee acts as a bridge between the external auditor and the main board. Its responsibilities these days are widening. In some companies, the Audit Committee reports to the shareholders, answers questions about the annual accounts. The Audit Committee has also been given the additional responsibility for compliance, ensuring compliance with corporate governance requirements. The Audit Committee plays a major role in the modern approach and regulation of corporate governance. And the Remuneration Committee. Again, a main board standing committee comprised of independent directors whose job it is to recommend the remuneration of particularly the executive directors and usually other members of top management, making certain that individuals are not taking decisions on their own remuneration, but that it's being independently and objectively assessed. And the Nominating Committee, another main board standing committee comprised wholly or mainly of independent directors. The chairman, who may be an executive, may also be a member, and the role of the Nominating Committee to advise the board on the appointment and, where appropriate, reappointment of board members. The argument for having independent directors to make recommendations on future board appointments is that it has the potential to avoid the board becoming a cosy club made up of like-minded people and thereby losing a degree of its objectivity. Of course, boards have, in many cases, lots of other committees. In a complex company, the sheer weight of information, the weight of decision required to be taken at board level means that some of it needs to be delegated to smaller groups of directors who can then feed forward their findings, the minutes of their committee meetings, to the main board. Some companies have executive, general purpose committee. Others form a strategy committee or a finance committee. There is a potential problem with such subcommittees of the board, and that is that the committee takes on a life of its own, that the minutes of the meeting of the subcommittee of the board do not fully rehearse the issues, and that the other directors begin to rely on the subcommittee for its decision taking. In other words, although in law all the directors are equally responsible for the issues facing the company and for the running governance oversight of the company, it gets delegated to these small ad hoc groups. Increasingly, companies these days are forming corporate governance committees or compliance committees. Others are, as I've said earlier, give that responsibility to the Audit Committee. Risk management committees are a newcomer to the scene. And then, of course, boards can at any time form an ad hoc committee to take on the responsibility for a particular issue. For example, if two companies merge, an ad hoc board committee to be concerned with the implications of that merger. And so, in this lecture, I have sought to differentiate different types of director and director appointment, recognizing that the word director can be used in many different ways, including, and not forgetting, the title to be used by people who are not actually members of the board. I might add, just in passing, that most company law jurisdictions have a proviso that if an outside party believes that a person who is not a director is acting as though they were a director, company law allows the outside party to hold that person responsible as though they were a director. We also looked at the important distinction between independent, non-executive or outside directors and connected outside or non-executive directors. We saw how the codes of practice require a separation between chairman and chief executive roles, and how, nevertheless, in United States companies, the practice is for the role of chairman of the board and chief executive officer to be combined. And then we focused on alternative board structures, looking at the Hong Kong and quite widespread unitary board model, which has a mixture of executive directors and outside or non-executive directors, and also in the process distinguishing the supervisory board structure. And finally, we looked at board committees, the Audit Committee, the Nominating Committee, and the Remuneration Committee. Thank you.